Welcome to Early, the podcast about business in Web3 from Bankless Consulting. I'm your host, D-Side, and on each episode of Early, I'm joined by thought leaders, innovators, and other denizens of Web3 who are building the internet of the future. Money is programmable, assets are digital, and exchanges are decentralized here. So join me on this journey into the past, the present, and the future of Web3. And remember, if you're here, you're early. Welcome to Early, the podcast about the business of Web3 from Bankless Consulting. I'm your host, D-Side, and today my very special guest is Patrick Workman. Patrick is the Vice President of Growth and Partnerships at Unlock, an open source community governed protocol that enables businesses to generate recurring revenue through subscriptions and memberships. He's a renowned expert in driving growth and revenue of organizations through strategic partnerships and consultative audience planning. We'll talk a lot about that. Before joining Unlock, Patrick led the partnerships arm of operations at tech giants, including Google, Experian, and as the brand marketing manager of Instagram, he led the launch of Instagram Marketing Partners. I'm sure there's a big story behind that. Building networks of marketing technology companies to help brands scale their advertising campaigns. Welcome, Patrick. Great to have you here, man.
Yeah, happy to be here. Stoked for this conversation.
Yeah, cool. Tell me about Instagram. Let's start there.
So I joined the Instagram team after being with Facebook for 3 years when we were launching advertising. And at the time, Instagram advertising was very early. I mean, an Instagram campaign was a big brand would provide 3 to 5 images. The promise from Instagram was you're going to reach a bunch of people on Instagram. There weren't links to that brand. There weren't call to actions. Think of it as a television campaign, but within the Instagram app. And at the time, we as brand development leads were actually approving the creative to make sure it was Instagram worthy, to make sure everything looked a certain way. So very early days. We quickly wanted to scale that business because obviously working directly with brands isn't very scalable. So Instagram was integrated into what was formerly Facebook, now Meta's advertising platform. And with that, brands could reach people across the network. So if you're a brand and you wanted to reach people that like sports, you could say, hey, Facebook, let me reach people that like sports. And then Facebook would find those people across all of their owned and operated properties. From there, I was responsible with launching the Instagram Marketing Partners, which was a network of advertising technology companies that were buying Facebook advertising on behalf of agencies as well as brands. And with that, we scaled Instagram advertising pretty quickly because if you plug those brands into Instagram, it just created a massive additional inventory source in order to serve more ads to reach the right people at the right time.
Yeah. And what was your background in that sort of just connecting the dots before that?
So before joining Facebook, I worked in the automotive industry. So early on, like after graduating from college, I worked for Ford. I actually ran a car dealership in my 20s, so kind of a varied background. I then joined a company called dealer.com where we built websites for car dealerships, which seems like a very niche market until you realize there's tens of thousands of car dealerships around the world, and they all need a website to display their inventory. So I led national partnerships for that group. So I was working with all the car companies and creating websites for their dealer networks. And with that, that's where I had my first kind of foray into developing these partnerships, creating programs, scaling those programs. And then Facebook hired me to build their go-to-market strategy for the automotive vertical. So that's how I really went from doing automotive stuff into big tech.
Yeah. And jumping ahead, I mean, I can see the connection in community building for Web3. We can get back to that because I know you had some other steps along the way. What was your previous role before or after Instagram before you got to Unlock?
Yeah. So I was at Pinterest to launch their marketing
Yeah.
programs as well.
Yeah.
So after Instagram, I was
Similar
there.
model. Did you work off the similar
It
premise?
was a copy pasta of what
Hmm.
had been done in the past because the
It
advertising
worked.
technology companies already had Facebook plugged in. So the question was, hey, could you
Sure.
plug in Pinterest? Then you have additional inventory sources. After I left uh, Pinterest, this is when the first light bulb went off for me that there was a better way to be on the
Yeah.
internet. I attempted to launch a social network for live music fans called fans.com. The idea behind it was I was connecting people that were attending a concert,
Yep.
either before the event, during the event, or after the event. The challenge that I faced is the friction of finding people that were going to any concert was too great. And I attempted to get the information that I needed working with Ticketmaster, Access, all of the big ticketing organizations. And all of that data is held by these private companies and isn't
Sure.
available for anyone to build off of. So, because of that, I could never find product market fit because I couldn't access this data. That was the first time that I experienced as an entrepreneur the real cold start problem that exists, where if data
Yep.
is held by large organizations and entrepreneurs can't access that data, you can't compete or build something on this versus the alternative of if that data was available within a public network that anyone could look at and then build applications, I think we'd have a better internet today because we'd
Sure.
have more competition, we'd have better applications, we'd have very niche applications that accomplished very small goals, not thinking big, but actually thinking small and delivering value to a smaller audience that wants to engage in that way. As it stands today, that's not possible. The data is held by very large online platforms where their secret sauce is the data that they're ingesting, the concept of data being oil. And that data is being used
Sure.
in order to do matchmaking between those large organizations and oftentimes advertising, because the business model of the web today is attention. So the incentive for any large platform or app is to keep your eyeballs on that app as long as possible because your eyeballs equal inventory. And the more inventory an app has, the easier they can match make you with an advertiser that's willing to pay the most to get in front of you and in hopes that you're going to click on an ad and buy something. So as long as the incentive of platforms is to keep you on platform, this is what causes the kind of an inferior spread of information because the incentive is keep me there by any
Sure.
means necessary.
Not necessarily share the wealth, not
Exactly.
necessarily
or
get the
provide factual information.
the best service or product. Yeah. So how is in your estimation, like how is Web3 different? How is decentralization going to change that?
Decentralization will remove that data from these very large online platforms. So if you think of,
Hmm.
I think of the internet as the operating system for humanity. Try to survive on a Wednesday between the hours of 1 and 2 without the internet. Like, I dare you to do it. Shut everything off and just try to work for an hour. It's impossible. And the
You
reality
don't have to
is,
convince me. I agree.
and the reality is, a majority of the world doesn't have that access to the internet. And the reason they don't is the internet is owned by private corporations. The pipeline that gives us the internet and provides that bandwidth is owned by private entities. And then the places we go on the internet are private companies that are some of the biggest organizations in the world. And the amount of control that they have of this thing that's like air is 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 wrong. And I think there's a better way to do this. So from a maybe not decentralization necessarily, but public information on public networks that anyone can access at any point in time. In the event that those networks were decentralized, that provides common ownership But an example would be an Amazon blockchain. If Amazon had a public network that other entrepreneurs could build off of, we would have better apps, and likely some of the best recommendation engines that have ever been created, because everyone would have access to that data and they'd be able to really create robust experiences.
Yeah, and let's not mistake anything. When you say public, to some people that tends to imply government owned and run. Um, I think a synonym would be more likely open source across the board.
So at Unlock, we're a proponent of the open source movement. So
Yeah,
Unlock protocol, and maybe just a little background on Unlock. So Unlock
sure.
creates memberships. Those memberships are NFTs. Not to get too technical, but those NFTs are ERC 721. So the same NFTs that are probably in most of your wallets if you're crypto native.
Hmm.
It's an open source protocol that's been creating memberships as NFTs since 2018. So before NFTs were cool, while
Nice.
they were cool, now that they're not cool anymore.
So NFTs aren't just JPEGs, you're saying?
On Unlock, they're not.
I know, of course.
And well,
I know that, and most people in the know understand that. I think there's a misperception amongst the general public that that's what all NFTs are apes or or dogs or something, JPEGs.
perhaps. And
But this is real use of NFTs, real functionality.
yeah, when we think about this, the kind of V1 of NFTs in the
Yep.
form of digital collectibles, that
Yep.
that wasn't our vibe. Because what Unlock does
Yep.
is it makes smart contracts smarter and it provides them with superpowers. One of those superpowers is the ability to have time constraints within a smart contract. Because if you can
Yep.
put time constraints within a smart contract, you can create tokens that expire. And if you can create tokens that expire, you can build businesses on blockchains like paid membership programs, subscriptions, tickets, certifications, free
Sure.
trials, either for products or access, advertising campaigns. So our focus is about value creation and how do we help creators, communities, and enterprises generate predictable and recurring revenue on chain.
Yeah. Um, That's awesome. And I know some of your products are based on that, and particularly the time lock or the expiration. You do ticketing
Yeah,
for events, right?
yeah. So we have, I think, due ticketing for events, and
That's
also,
one of your products, is
yeah, and
right?
with Unlock Protocol being open source, anyone can build applications on top of Unlock. I work for Unlock Labs, and we build
Okay.
applications in order to inspire developers to think differently about blockchains and how they could utilize Unlock Protocol. So inspiration is really our gimmick. And we built a
Yep.
product, Events by Unlock Labs, that think about it as an Eventbrite for Web3. An event organizer deploys a contract through our app. There's then an event details page that is created. They send that event details page out to anyone that they want to attend their event. When potential attendees visit that page, they can register with their first name, last name, email address. And if they are crypto native and have a self-custodial wallet, they could also claim that as an NFT. But the purpose of the event is
Nice.
getting people to the event. So after somebody goes through that user journey and says they're attending, they receive an email. But you don't have to have a self-custodial wallet in order to go to the event. You just receive an email within a walletless
Right.
airdrop. You receive event information, you receive a QR code. And then from an organizer's perspective, they can manage that experience in the same way that that they do on Eventbrite. So they can see the names of their
Right.
attendees, they have their email addresses, but that event's on chain. So they have a contract address that they can use
Yep.
in the future in order to create a token enabled experience within a Discord channel or a Telegram group or a token enabled Google Doc or Notion in order to stoke participation after that event as well.
All right. So a couple of questions on that. First off, you don't need a custodial wallet, so anybody could essentially buy a ticket and the Web3 component or the blockchain component is working in the background, right? To host the smart contract is the NFT and the actual the actual ticket, right? Proof of the ticket is can be in the form of an email, or it can be on a custodial wallet, correct?
Yeah, and maybe just to back up a bit. So a ticket to an event is a membership to that event. Whether you're
Sure.
going to a single concert or you're going to a conference, you're a member of that event that's occurring. So by putting these on chain, you're creating a contract on a public ledger that anyone could access, kind of who those token owners are. Now, in the event that somebody doesn't have a self-custodial wallet, the
Right.
email address actually creates a semi-custodial wallet within another contract, but the attendee receives an email. So the currency on the other side is whether you buy or whether you buy a ticket or claim a free ticket, you receive an email that has a ticket with a QR code that you can then go into the event. And we built just through a mobile web app, you can use your camera on your phone, scan those tickets and check people in. And
Yep.
we do some pretty big events. Like ECC built a ticketing app on top of Unlock last year for their 2,000 attendees. I was actually there in
Nice.
Paris checking people in and also training some people that had never used the app. And there was a bigger queue in the security line than there ever was checking people in with this mobile app. So it was very efficient. And the thing with
Yeah.
public blockchains, like scalability isn't a challenge because they're just transactions that are being processed. In order to speed that up, we also organizations can also do gasless transactions. So you're completely removing the friction of gas in the event that somebody doesn't have a crypto wallet
Sure.
or they don't have enough of that native currency in order to complete the transaction.
Is there anything holding Unlock holding you guys back from doing larger events, concerts like 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge with ticketing, and I went deep on ticketing when I was building fans.com because obviously to get
Okay.
into a live event, you need to have a ticket. And
Yep.
the way the food chain works, at least in the United States, is every venue has an exclusive venue agreement with a ticketing provider. So
Right.
Ticketmaster, in your example, would go to Madison Square Garden and say, I will give you tens of millions of dollars to be the exclusive ticketing provider for Madison Square Garden for X number of years. Now, Madison Square Garden, they can't use another ticketing provider in order to ticket that event. So they
Right.
cannot use Unlock. There was a band in the 90s, String Cheese Incident, that wanted to tour with mail order tickets. And they went in front of Congress and said, "This is wrong. We want to do this." And
Right.
that was
Right.
shut
Right.
down. I mean, Pearl Jam attempted to do this as well because they wanted to use their
Yep.
own ticketing
Yep.
platform and they wanted to set the terms. All those were shut down. So as long as there's exclusive venue agreements in the United States, that's what's holding not just us, but Eventbrite, Partyful, Meetup, all of us, like
Yep.
no one can ticket those events unless you're dishing out tens of millions of dollars to get those rights. Now that's different in Europe.
Partnership agreements.
Yeah,
Yep.
in
Okay.
European markets, it is open. So there are few exclusive uh, venue agreements. So
Yep.
multiple ticket providers have access to that inventory, and as a consumer, you can choose who you want to work with.
Sure. Is that something that you work on? Those sort of partnerships?
So we're in contact with the large ticketing companies. Those
Okay.
conversations are based around building on Unlock protocol. So think of
Yep.
think
Ticketmaster has talked about. I think they started an NFT based ticketing program.
so
Am I
Ticketmaster
am I talking about
has
the same thing?
yeah, so
Yeah.
Ticketmaster offered a token enabled experience in order to get tickets
Okay.
for the name of the band escapes me. But essentially the artist has a membership program that is a contract
Okay.
on a public blockchain, Polygon, and people can people that have that token can connect their wallet and receive early access to buy tickets from that artist. So
Got it.
this is a
Got it.
way for artists to reward their communities that are
Sure.
participating in what they're doing on blockchains. So I think that's
Yeah.
really phase one. Phase two of this will
Yeah, it sounds like a stepping stone to actual ticketing.
And you mentioned before kind of what's holding Unlock back, and this isn't just Unlock, this is the space in general.
Yeah.
Until there are
Sure.
enough wallet-aware experiences that are token enabled, it's kind of a chicken and the egg challenge, because if there aren't the experiences creating enough value, there's not enough tokens that are being created to go into those spaces. So what we're seeing from an enterprise perspective are these single player applications. So Nike with their .swoosh program, I think is a perfect example. As a Nike .swoosh holder, I have a custodial wallet that's my Nike wallet that I have my .swoosh profile. And then yesterday I was able to claim the OF1 box drop as a result of being a Nike holder. All of that is living within the my Nike account or my Nike wallet. Nike's not enabled the ability for me to transfer, sell, trade any of those NFTs that's in my wallet today. At some point in the future, I predict that Nike will allow me to transfer those to a self-custodial wallet, and then I can connect to other experiences outside of Nike where Nike's creating a larger kind of multiplayer or ecosystem effect outside of the brand, which I think we can kind of go into here in a moment too.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. You're a music guy.
Yeah, I mean,
you're a big music fan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that part of your interest in all of this? Like, do you sort of want to work with bands, want to work with venues? Is that something that you personally are trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so Unlock is really an infrastructure play. So the way that I describe it is there's a public blockchain, then there's protocols that talk to applications. Unlock is the protocol that's talking to applications. So behind the scenes of any of these apps, whether it be Ticketmaster or an entrepreneur that's looking to create an app to go against and compete against Ticketmaster, we're really behind the scenes. So when Unlock is used, it's very possible you wouldn't know that Unlock was there. That Unlock would just be the infrastructure that's talking to the blockchain in order to deploy those contracts. To answer your question of being a music fan, though, like my inspiration of getting into this is I'm a massive fan of Phish. I've been following the band since 1997. I think I've attended over 150 shows. I'm very active within that community. And what I was attempting to do at fans.com was how could we create a community around other artists like Phish, because I was like so enamored with what Phish is able to do. What I learned very quickly is going back to the data challenge is without having that data from Ticketmaster or Access, I couldn't connect. I couldn't connect those fans. And what we also found is the communities associated with most artists are very small. Like the amount of people that love Portugal the Man is probably like 25 humans that are just like Portugal the Man is
passionate, super
their
passionate,
thing.
Right.
And even when you go higher up the food chain, like the Backstreet Boys, like there may be 1,000 people globally that are all in on the Backstreet Boys. So when you're looking at creating businesses on top of that, it's great for the artist. It's just really challenging to build kind of a broad application when you're focused on all of those niche communities due to the fact that they're just not that large, and the work to set up Portugal the Man and their handfuls of fans is just as hard as supporting what's happening with the Backstreet Boys.
That's kind of amazing. I mean, you say 1,000 all-in passionate fans. I'm a big fan of Kevin Kelly, and I don't know if he came up with the concept or just wrote just an amazing blog about it. That 1,000 passionate fans, and you have a business that's going to succeed for years. So that's a good place to start. I mean, if you can get to 1,000.
So the idea was 1,000 true fans. And if you have 1,000 true fans as a
Yep. Yep.
creator, you can build a sustainable business. And if you're a musician, this means that there are at
Yeah.
least 1,000 people that are picking up what you're laying down. They're going to probably buy your vinyl. They're going to buy your merch. They're going to attend every one of your shows. They're going
Sure.
to evangelize to their friends and family how great you are and really create that effect around what your brand is. The reality is there's very few artists that have 1,000 true fans. There's also very few creators that have 1,000
Sure.
people that really care about everything that they're doing. And these are true fans. This is me being passionate about
Yep.
fish. I mean, I estimate that there's probably 20,000 people around the globe that are excited about fish as I am. And this is a brand that has a massive community.
Yeah.
The Grateful Dead, there could be
Yep.
100,000 people that are all in on the Dead and any side project that any of their
Sure.
original members do. They'll
Sure.
kind of lap that up. But in order for
Yep.
most artists, creators, writers, producers, filmmakers across the board, getting to that 1,000 true fans is really challenging to build a community around everything that you're doing. And
For sure.
especially when you're completely reliant upon very large online platforms to do that, because you're, as a creator, you're leasing space on Instagram or Facebook and YouTube. And if you're leasing that space, at any point in time, that platform can change their algorithm, your organic reach diminishes, and then your only way to reach your true fans is through paid advertising. So now you have to create a way to kind of an arbitrage opportunity of what are you providing from a paid
Yep.
perspective on the other side. And that's where blockchains can also come in as well, because through micropayments, you can token gate experiences on the other side that aren't possible through traditional payment rails, where with Stripe, you're paying
Right.
2.9% of a transaction as well as a 30-cent transaction fee. On blockchains, you could cover the gas on a network like Polygon, and you're paying cents in order to achieve those microtransactions.
Yeah. So how does that all translate over to Web3 communities? I mean, the objective for a lot of Web3 communities is to build a following, build their community on through Twitter and Discord primarily. I mean, as you said, still just renting space. You're subject to the ground rules and any changing environment on those platforms. I mean, Twitter changes their algorithm on a monthly basis. Who knows what Elon's going to decide next, right? What's going to be allowed, not allowed. Yeah. How does that affect your ability to do your job?
Yeah, so again, being kind of infrastructure, we're providing the technology that enables these creators and communities to create
Yep.
programs to support what they're doing. And if they're doing that in a decentralized way, they take ownership of that community. Where
Hmm.
if you're creating a community on Twitter or within Discord, oftentimes you don't know the first and last name of the people in your community, and you also don't have their email address. So I think one of the biggest misses of kind of V1 community building was we all clicked mint buttons and we minted NFTs, that we are an anonymous account on a public blockchain that now holds a token within a contract. And once we had that token, we could connect our wallet to Discord, and then we entered a community. And often those communities were a community of speculators asking, when's this token going to go up? What are you doing, community leaders, to make this token go up? Which I would say really isn't a community. I mean, that's a casino more so than anything
For
else. So
sure.
we're entering
It's
these
a frenzy.
casino
Sure.
spaces. If you think about the missed opportunity there, these projects and community organizers weren't collecting things that are fundamental to the internet. So they weren't collecting the names, and most importantly, they weren't collecting email addresses. Email's been around since 1971. Email works
Right.
really well as a communication channel for everyone. If those early projects collected
Sure.
email addresses, they could send on a regular basis to their members what was happening within their communities in order to get them to re-engage. As it stands today, there are Discord servers. I don't know about you, but I have 120 different logos within Discord of different servers, of which I probably haven't visited 145 in 6 months. They're just there because I have a token that I purchased at some point in time, and I'm a member of that community. So in terms of kind of providing the technology to do that, we have at Unlock, we have a checkout modal where we make a creator can decide what metadata they want to collect during the minting process.
Sure.
And they can collect first name, last name, email address. They can make that optional. They can make that required based upon what they want to do in their community. The most challenging part of community building is still like, what is the community? So the idea of I can just put the name community and then bring a bunch of people together, and organically that community will foster into this thriving ecosystem of members that are all working on behalf of this project or brand. That's really a utopian vision that I think we all believe in working on blockchains. And I do think will happen in the future. We're just not there yet. So this is like building a community, going back to your music analogy, that one of the biggest challenges is if you're a musician, you want to make music and you have to tour in order to earn a living. There isn't surviving on just making music and streams on Spotify or vinyl. It's not a way that you can earn a sustainable living. So if you're asking those artists to now create content, interviews, one-on-ones, Zooms, give away backstage access, invite people to your sound check, like kiss babies and shake hands, that's asking a lot of somebody.
It's a different job.
You're asking
it's a whole different lifestyle.
These are people that are looking to create music and perform. And in order to continue to re-engage an audience, if you're not touring, your content is really like, there's not a lot out there. So the question becomes, how do you keep re-engaging those communities? A lot of the conversations I have with people that are looking to build Web3 communities are based around the technology, but what I throw back every time is like, what is this thing that you're building? Like, what are you offering? The technology is easy. I could deploy through Unlock's membership dashboard. We could deploy a membership contract to any EVM compatible blockchain within 2 minutes. And then you have a membership dashboard where you could manage the contract that you've just created. You could edit the properties of that NFT. You could create a checkout experience that you could put as a pop-up on a website, or you could just send the link out and have people start minting these either for free or paid via crypto or Stripe if you have a Stripe account. So the technology to set these things up is there, and that's what we're providing. What often is missing is, what is the other thing? What's the community strategy? What is the content? What is the experience in order to get people to you and then be able to retain them so they continually engage?
Yeah. So a couple comments. First of all, I think one of the challenges of early Web3 and particularly NFT JPEG community, JPEG-based communities, and artist-based communities, was that a bulk of the audience was interested in staying anonymous, not sharing too much of their information, not sharing their email address just because they were buying an NFT. So, that I think that posed a problem or sort of a challenge for that sort of data collection. I expect going forward that more mass adoption and more just regular participation in this space, or how this space actually migrates over to more traditional space, it'll become easier. People are not that freaked out about sharing their email addresses, or, I think that was a sort of a guiding ethos of early Web3. So that might, I expect that to change a little bit.
Yeah, and if we think about, let's look at the space and think about like that early use case, which I agree, anonymity on chain, it was kind of an initial, that was the initial reason to do this. But if we're going to grow and we're going to build Web3, we need to grow. And the minority of people that want to be completely anonymous on the internet isn't that big. I mean, if you ask the average consumer,
Right.
should my information be private? They'll say, of course it should be private. But then you really talk about what that represents in terms of just you being anonymous surfing around the internet and the inferior experience that you'll get. I mean, rather than me being
Yeah.
targeted with t-shirts that have like funny stuff on them, which I'm a sucker for Instagram ads with any clever t-shirt, I'm going to be receiving ads for Viagra or for class action lawsuits because
Right.
those are the highest bidders.
Right.
And if we look at like
Right.
monthly active wallets, like on Ethereum, there's 6.4 million active wallets. And that's
Yeah.
kind of stayed pretty even for a really long time. There's 7 billion there's
Yeah.
7 billion people on planet Earth, and we're reaching 6 million of them. If we're going to grow this and get to
Right.
1 billion users, we need to be smarter about how we're approaching this. And the idea of anonymity on chain, I feel, is holding us back because most consumers do want
hmm
to be contacted. And if you're a token on a contract address and you have an anonymous account, there's no way for that brand or project or community to contact you without an email address, which
Right.
continues to be the most valuable currency on the internet.
Yeah. I think we'll have to find a balance because even, I mean, I think everyday users are more and more freaked out by being surveilled or being tracked, but at the same time understanding if if there's an understanding of the value behind and it could be anonymous sharing to an address, right? In order to like track usage, if I have an anonymous identity on chain, I still that identity still has a pattern and still is an identity, and I think that that's valuable to advertisers and to and for commercial use. Do you see things going in that path?
I see a world where we'll all have multiple wallets with different tokens in
Right,
them that will represent
different
different
identities.
identities in terms of I may have a professional
Kind of
identity, I may have a personal identity, I may have
sure.
a just an identity of something that I'm trying to be. Or and I mean us that are crypto native, we actually have that today. Like we have a hot wallet, we have a
It's pretty
cold
wild. Yeah.
wallet, we have a couple of other wallets that we're using.
Yep.
Without on-chain messaging today, that's where that idea breaks down because while brands want to engage with a Web3 audience that typically represents people that are kind of very innovative, very tech
Yeah.
forward, as well as affluent, because these are people that aren't scared to pay a bunch of gas in order to participate in this new thing. There has to be some sort of connective tissue. And as it stands today, a wallet address with tokens from contracts just isn't enough to build out those audience profiles in order for a brand to target them. But I do believe in the world that you've described.
hmm
It just are some missing pieces, the biggest of which is how do you message these people that own these tokens?
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. Well, that kind of leads to one of the other projects of Unlock, which is AlphaTweet.
Yes.
And tell, tell, tell us about
So
AlphaTweet.
I think before I go into AlphaTweet, like I mentioned before, inspiration is
Yeah.
our gimmick. And
hmm
I think our team is hustling harder than any other team in Web3. So we've
Nice.
created multiple experiences. So we created Flocker, which is an app where you could migrate your flock or your Twitter followers anywhere. And this
hmm
was to tell a story about interoperability. So as a
You said you can migrate them
yeah, the way
anywhere.
that it works is you go to flocker.app, you enter your Twitter profile, that creates a
hmm
link where you could send out to all of your followers and they claim a membership NFT on your contract. And then as a creator, I can take that contract address, put it in any wallet aware experience. If I'm a token holder, I get to go in there. So it's an idea of really taking ownership as a creator of your people that are your followers versus the alternative of just leaning on Twitter. We've also done things like an advent calendar. So if you're familiar with the Christmas holiday, you open door number one on the first day of December. And once that's opened, you see something, you experience something. And if you do door number one, you can do door number two. And if you do door number three, if you do door number two, you can do door number three, and so on. We launched this experiment on Polygon, thinking that there may be 10,000 claims. There were over 250,000 transactions on Polygon over that 24-day period of time. So that one worked. That one worked really well. We've also done things at Ethereum Denver where we did a treasure hunt, where think of an episodic adventure where you go through 6 different stages and then at the end you win something. In this case, unlock socks. We did to celebrate Chinese New Year. We launched an application to celebrate the Hongbao tradition that was creating viral sharing. As a user, you would mint and then you receive 2 NFTs, one of which you could share with somebody. And then at the end of the experience, those red envelopes could have contained a prize of some monetary value. So you would receive some degree of MATIC based upon how many people participated. Going into AlphaTweet, especially, that's what we launched last week, and we're really excited about it. What AlphaTweet allows is the ability for any creator to token gate their content and this is the exciting part, offer an incentive mechanism to their followers who have purchased access to share a link and drive an incentive. So kind of from a use case standpoint, if I create a blog post and I put it on AlphaTweet, I send a link out to all of my followers. My followers come to that page. They buy access for whatever currency they want, or whatever currency that I'm charging on the network of my choice. Once they buy access, they can share the link on their Twitter, and then anyone that clicks that link comes through and buys access, they receive a reward. So as a creator, I can decide what that referral amount could be. It could be 1%, it could be 100%. Kind of whatever I want to do in order to drive more people to my membership contract that I've created through AlphaTweet. So this is, think on-chain content distribution, where you're not reliant upon algorithms, you're reliant upon your biggest fans that are now acting as that distribution channel on your behalf. And you can both experience those rewards. As a creator, you're getting more people that are paying access to participate in what you're doing, and you're rewarding your biggest fans in order to share that and promote what you're doing as well.
So using the Twitter platform as an avenue for an affiliation program.
Yeah, and this is part of our
tweet affiliation.
Yeah, and this is really part of our Alpha series. So with AlphaTweet, we've made it easy for people to share on Twitter. Based upon the learnings here, we may extend this to other platforms. So I could see AlphaGram or Alpha Interest or Alpha Oogle, where people are incentivized in order to share across those platforms in some capacity, in order to share in the rewards of what that creator is also creating.
Yep, monetizing Twitter for the
or just monetizing content, because the content behind there is it could be long form blog posts, it could be an interview with somebody, it could really be anything, not exactly a tweet. Twitter being used as a way in order to kind of share those links and drive traffic.
Just a transmission. Yeah. Has anyone else doing this, or has this ever been done?
So in
before?
terms of
on Twitter,
so I'm not aware of anyone that's done this on Twitter. There are referral programs that are out there. Sound.xyz is one that comes to mind. In Sound's example, they've chosen the path of a set referral fee. So if a fan of an artist shares something and somebody clicks that affiliate link, that individual receives 5% of that purchase, and that's locked in. Lens has something similar as well with their mirror product, where there's a referral mechanism that's involved.
Yeah.
Our app, AlphaTweet, is the only example where the creator really controls their own destiny. So as a creator, you're deploying your own contract. That's permissionless. You own it. No one at Unlock Labs, who I work for, can do anything with that contract unless you add me as a manager to that contract for some reason. You want me to help you out.
Okay.
You can, as a creator, you now have that contract address that you can take anywhere. So you could take it to another wallet-aware token-enabled platform. Like you could set up a Telegram group, you could set up a Discord channel. You could create a Shopify site that is token-enabled. So there's a lot more that you can do with that. And through that checkout experience, you can also collect names and email addresses from your followers. So now you have a way in which to continually communicate with them.
Sure. Where do you see that going? Like how else are you going to build on that application? It sounds like you can take it in a few different directions.
Yeah, it can go in a lot of different directions. So one application would be putting research reports on a pay-per-view basis. So rather than pay a monthly fee to a research firm, you could enable users to purchase one report. And maybe somebody's charging $50 a month for all you can eat access to a premium version, but then they could charge $5.99 to view a single report. And the idea behind that is how could you sell single reports to people that want to just read that one report, and then even potentially upsell them to kind of additional research as well.
Right. You're a big fan of micropayments.
Well, if you think about blockchains as a reason to do this, like traditional payment rails are too extractive, and you can't, as a creator, do anything like reasonably. If you try to do anything under $10, it's very challenging because of that 30-cent transaction fee as well as the 2.9%. So if we're going to move in a world where content isn't free, I think we've all bought into this meme, right? So it's an idea that the internet is free. Everything that's created and put on the internet, we can just get it all because it's all there. The reality is all that content has been sponsored by a brand. And the reason it's been sponsored by a brand is why we can see this. So you go to CNN.com and you see display ads. And because you see those display ads, your experience is sponsored by those brands. The reality of that advertising is it's incredibly ineffective. If you are getting a 0.05% click-through rate on your display advertising campaign, as a CMO, you could be CMO of the year. I mean, that's a really good click-through rate for any kind of display advertising. And the reason being is we all have ad fatigue because we've just become immune to seeing all of these ads around the internet. If you think about the concept of membership and individuals truly contributing directly to that creator, we're now helping to provide sustainable livings to people that are looking to create. The reason the internet wasn't created that way, maybe just to back up in a history lesson, is when HTTP was first created by Tim Berners-Lee. And that team created HTTP, which is the protocol that powers the internet today. That's allowing us to browse things on the web. So every web application has been built on that. It's just code. There was no payment layer associated there. And have you ever been traveling around the web and you see a 401 or a 404 error, like this page doesn't exist? That's common. You visit a web page that doesn't exist and they put up a common error, hey, this thing isn't there. There's also another one that's not, there was something else within the code called a 402 payment required. And 402 payment required is still there in the original documentation. And the reason it's there is the people that have invented the World Wide Web as we know it realized that in order for content to come on the web, those people that were producing that content had to get paid. Now, when this was released in 1989, the idea of people even having a credit card or putting a credit card into the machine
Right.
was ridiculous. People were
Right.
scared of the machines. They wouldn't give their payment information to these machines.
For sure.
That
For
moment was
sure.
a pivotal moment in human history, though,
Yeah.
because if the internet was a paid mechanism and we didn't think the internet was paid, the incentive of these online platforms wouldn't be attention. It would be, how are you driving distribution for creators so they could get paid directly? It would have completely flip-flopped what we're doing. And that's what we believe membership can offer to the internet.
Yep. Yeah, and all of that is, it's so interesting. I think it was, I'm looking at some notes, 2004, Chris Anderson of Wired Magazine wrote a long piece about the long tail. And the long tail has existed in many ways, except the long tail tends to get eaten by the larger, so, an example was Amazon. So now small retailers or small builders can sell stuff, but they still have to go through Amazon, or they have to go through Etsy, or they have to pay somebody else to, even beyond that, be part of the machine. What you're saying, I think you're freeing up the idea of decentralization, and these other payment mechanisms allow creators to do it on their own if they
Yeah,
have
it's
the ability.
how do you reduce the reliance on very large online platforms and third-party payment
Yep.
processors? And those are the two blockers from kind of the long
Sure.
tail of creators from earning a sustainable living. That the long tail is a
Yep.
great read. If you haven't read that book, I would definitely recommend anyone who hasn't read it
Yeah.
listening to this, check it out. The reality is, if you take a look at kind of how this works, on Spotify, for example, only 0.8% of artists globally with music on Spotify are earning more than 50,000 US dollars a year. So that
Yep.
long tail
Yep.
is real. And once you get out of that less than 1%, to earn a living using Spotify as a distribution mechanism for your music, that just doesn't pay the bills. Like, that's not something that you can
Right.
do. So the promise of the long tail and the reality of the creator economy is that if you're going to make it and you can earn a living, you have to be the best of the best. You have to be Mr.
For
Beast.
sure.
And I think that the examples of doing it on your own is like Mr. Beast from an influencer perspective. Chance the Rapper kind of going at it on his own and being independent
Sure.
and doing that. There are people that can do it, but if you take a look at those models, as a creator, you have to be the best, and you have to continue to provide information that's going to be relevant in order to retain your audience and generate predictable recurring revenue.
Yeah. So to that point, how do young artists, how do new blossoming artists get distribution? Even Chance the Rapper, for example, I know he probably had some sort of grassroots and local following, but at some point he also, and I don't know the facts, but I imagine he also probably got a record deal and was essentially sponsored by a record company, right, or a production company, and they gave him studio time and they helped him set up his infrastructure and distribution. So how do you account for
so
that
Chance the Rapper
now?
is actually the exception. He actually went out as being independent, so he didn't rely upon a label to do that.
Okay, bad example, but most artists
here's
need a
the
label
path.
behind them.
I form a band. We practice.
Yeah.
We maybe write a couple of songs. We then go out and we play some gigs. And if we're good, we're going to get some people that like our music. And if we have enough people that like our music, we're probably going to get the attention of an A&R person at a record label. And they're going to come in and they're going to sign us. And once they sign us, they're going to provide a guarantee. Within that guarantee, we're going to get studio time. And with that studio time, we're going to create music. And with that music, the label, hopefully, is going to promote us. And if that label does a good job of promoting us, that means we can play bigger rooms when we go out on tour. And bigger venues will consider me because our band, because we're becoming bigger. And that's the liftoff point for more artists. Now, what I just described doesn't happen often. Most bands are started in a garage. They play some gigs. A couple handfuls of people that are friends and family show up to those gigs, and that's where they plateau. So going back to kind of my earlier statement, if you want to succeed, you have to be the best of the best. You have to be really good at your craft. This isn't, hey, I can have some half-baked, half-assed idea and come out and succeed. Just like anything else in life, if you want to be successful, you have to try really hard, and you have to be kind of innovative, and you have to hustle.
Sure. And the opportunity is there to do it on your own, independently, without the middleman, without credit card fees, things like that. I think the infrastructure
is there. Now, what continues to be the challenge is distribution. So to your earlier point, if you want to do this on your own and you aren't going to use a very large online platform for distribution, it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, because the reality is people are consuming information on these platforms. And if you want to reach people, you have to be on those platforms in some way. So in terms of generating an initial following, dependent upon your craft, like you're going to Meta's owned and operated properties, you're going to Pinterest, you're going to YouTube, you're going to Snapchat, you're going to TikTok in order to build a base. And once you have a base, then you have an opportunity to control your own destiny. Inviting those individuals that are super fans to join you on an adventure that you've deployed a contract, and they're going to claim a membership on that contract. And then you're going to take those people to the platform of your choice. And then you're in the driver's seat. You can decide what you want to do, and you're not reliant upon an algorithm of a platform that's using your content to keep people on the platform, match those people with advertisers so they could sell stuff, so the advertisers sell stuff, and then the platform makes more money in the form of advertising revenue.
Sure. All right. So it still seems that it's extremely challenging for new artists to build their brand on their own. I mean, obviously, if they're the best of the best, things will happen for them and the opportunities are there. But why or when will we see the first mega band or mega artist completely go Web3 and take full ownership of their IP, their distribution? And some artists are doing this in some capacity. Louis C.K., the comedian, owns all of his, at least from a certain point on, owns all of his own material, does his own distribution, even assists other comedians in distribution now, like his own production house and distribution. It's not tokenized yet. It's not Web3. Who's going to be the first? How's it going to happen? How do you envision? And why hasn't Fish done it yet?
I'll start with things outside of Fish, so I don't go into a rabbit hole. If we take a look at what Avenged, if we take a look at Avenged Sevenfold, so this is the band that did the first token gated ticket sale through Ticketmaster.
Yep.
So they now have a contract, and their fans have tokens on this contract. And those fans that have the token can connect to Ticketmaster and get access to tickets that only are available to those token holders. So that's an early version of what could be possible. To answer your question, like starting off being, I'm just Web3, I don't know if technology drives the excitement behind an artist. That'd be the same way as saying that I'm just an Instagram fan. So I'm just a fan of this band because they're the first Instagram band. Like we never saw that. We didn't see the first Google band. Like those things, those ideas don't exist. I don't think the
Right.
technology changes. I think what the technology will provide and what we'll see on blockchains is the ability for these artists to just take more control of their own destiny. And if you know who your fans
Hmm.
are and you can take those fans across the internet or take them through digital or physical spaces, really bridging that like digital to physical type
Yeah.
model, that's where you really see power. And I think kind of bands like Avenged Sevenfold that are pursuing these types of models will lead kind of innovation and inspiration and learnings that other bands can follow. To go into your idea of Fish, the one of the biggest blockers is the friction that exists of onboarding. So if Fish decided to have a Fish app custodial wallet, which I do believe is the direction that most brands will go in order to activate people within these communities. If Fish
Mm-hmm.
did that, they would have people that would subscribe to or be a part of this community, and then they could communicate better with them. The reality is, Fish doesn't have any problem communicating with their super fans. They have a robust email list that they're using. They have an application called
Yeah.
LiveFish, where after every show, the recording of that concert is posted immediately. So anyone that is paying a $9.99 a
Amazing.
month subscription can access that. Um, so they have those own channels already via email. And when Fish wants to move beyond kind of the Twitter or Instagram and Meta or any Meta property in order to get additional distribution, they'll do that eventually. And I do think that all bands will have kind of that contract that is theirs. The question becomes kind of why in today's environment for an artist to do that. If you're a brand, it makes sense. If you're Starbucks and you want to be bigger than Starbucks, and you want
Sure.
to partner with Delta, Equinox, and the New York Times because you're a Starbucks loyalty member, I now get access to stuff and things from this ecosystem of collaborative partnerships. That makes more sense than an individual artist.
Sure. Um, yeah, and I mean the tools are there though, and yeah, I think I think we'll start seeing more and more of this sort of, well, more token gated event interactions. And a question on what you said before about Fish having their own wallet. Uh, how many wallets are we going to have? Meaning, like each individual. Do you see a world where I own 100 wallets, like for every club that I'm a part of, and is a wallet essentially
I
an
mean,
NFT?
a wallet's an
Meaning like
account.
a
I mean, technically,
contract.
a wallet
Yeah.
is an account on
Yeah.
mainnet or any EVM compatible blockchain.
Any
So
blockchain.
let's stop calling them wallets and just call them accounts. So I would have an account
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
many different places, the same way that I have an account today. I think eventually we'll enter a world where all of these accounts coincide, and then we'll have our master wallet that we can connect our wallet, and then
Yeah.
all of that stuff is just aggregated. But we, as a consumer, own kind of tokens that are within those apps. And then there will be a world where we then move those tokens to a self-custodial wallet, and then we truly take ownership. I I I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if where we stand today, there's enough people around the globe that want to take ownership of their online identities. And the reason being is they're not, I think it's an educational challenge. It's also a value challenge. Because if you think of your digital identity today,
Yeah.
it's like Frankenstein. So I'm on the island of Google. I'm on the island of Meta. I have maybe a tiny Pinterest island. I then have Spotify island. And what I'm doing as a internet user is I'm getting on a boat and I'm traveling to these islands. I'm knocking on the door of Google. I'm going into Google by signing in. I'm doing things within Google's environment. And then I want to go to Instagram. So I close the door, get back on the boat, go to Meta, knock on their door, and go and do that. But our digital identities are really fragmented. Like, I am Patrick Workman, like this is who I am in real life, but Patrick Workman online is all over the place. So if we can tie that together, because my identity is living on public blockchains and it's accessible to anyone, that's where you can really get a holistic picture of who we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that explanation. I think you have a unique ability to simplify the complex. And also, you've obviously thought about a lot of things that many people are doing, but not really thinking about. Like I hop on the internet and I go from site to site and fish around or whatever I'm doing. Um, I there's actually a map behind it, and there's a trail as well. So I
Yeah,
think you
and
explained
with
that
that
really
trail,
clearly.
just to build upon it a bit, like I predict that sometime in the future there will be a congressman or a senator of somewhere in the United States that wants to be president of the United States, and they will go after big tech, and they won't focus on kind of breaking up these companies because they're a monopoly. They will focus on making data available in a public way. So how do you make sure that all the data that Google has is accessible by any entrepreneur? And if you think about that application, and if you make data free, that data has to be on public blockchains. There's no way that you can have customer databases where people can pull from it. So I do think that at some point we're going to see that, where there'll be a massive data unlock and that data
Yeah,
will be on public blockchains. And then there's a very clear reason to do this. And that's when I think the ownership narrative and the idea of fragmented digital identity and a better way to internet would be to make this public, going back to my kind of operating system for humanity
yeah,
comment. Like, that's where
sure.
this really comes together.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a previous career in healthcare. I was a physical therapist and a practice owner for about 20 years. And my biggest challenge as the business owner was that we were locked into contracts with insurance companies, and it was nearly impossible to negotiate with them, particularly because I had no information and no access to their information, their data. They knew exactly how many visits and how many people are, physical therapy visits were happening in my region, how many we were doing, and so on and so forth. You know, ethical use of services and non-ethical use of services, where we were the premier provider in the region, but couldn't really take advantage of it because things were not negotiable, mostly because we did not have the data that they had. And healthcare is sort of it's a world of its own because of HIPAA and privacy. But that also, private blockchains or public blockchains that are that are behind privacy walls or behind locked walls really can change everything, particularly
Yeah,
for industries
it's
like that. And
yes,
that's
democratizing
just one
data.
example.
Hey,
Yeah,
why shouldn't we be able to
for sure.
access this? And
Huge.
I'm not referring to data in the form of personally identifiable information. I'm referring
Yep.
to it
Yep.
as, if you think about the insanity of me going to a bar and handing my ID, a piece of plastic, to a bouncer who looks at that piece of plastic and now knows my name and address as a result of sending that over, where the only requirement to get in that bar is A1 or not. Or
Yep.
even crazier, like, in order to prove that I went to a university, I reach out to that university. They send me a PDF of my diploma, and I then forward that PDF of a piece of paper to someone who looks at it and says, "Yep, this looks like a diploma," and that's it. I mean, that's the reference
Okay.
check.
Right.
I mean, there has to be a better way of
Yeah.
doing this, and the reason that there isn't is this data is
Right.
all private. So opening this up
Sure.
will create efficiencies across the board.
Sure. Yeah, I think we could have a whole conversation about zero knowledge proofs and other applications there. This has been an awesome conversation. You've definitely opened my eyes to a bunch of things and answered a lot of questions and shown some really cool stuff that you're working on. I do have one more question though. Do you have a dream project or something that you really would love to work on that you haven't yet?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two ways. So, kind of the dream use case for Unlock, and then a project that
Yeah,
I'm passionate about doing. So, the dream project, so the
nice.
dream kind of builder on top of Unlock would be Netflix. And the reason Netflix would be
Yeah,
perfect to move their subscriptions on chain is one, it's massive volume and massive revenue. So, from an efficiency standpoint, it would just make sense for them because Netflix wouldn't be reliant upon a third party payment processor anymore, and their profit margins would likely go up. But if you think of the network effect and ecosystem that a company like Netflix could create, wallet aware experiences around each of their programs, movies, merch, like everything that could happen there would be absolutely amazing. I think the only organization that would come close would be Disney, which also represents kind of this like they already have an
sure.
ecosystem of all of these stuff and things, but it's not
Yeah,
really connected today because it's all held by different customer databases by the different kind of organizations
mm,
within that holding company. From a project perspective, one thing that I'm really excited about right now is this idea of on-chain advertising. So we're in a holding pattern of sorts with Web3. And the reason being is until the SEC provides rules and clarity around what you can or cannot do on blockchains, it's very challenging for a Fortune 500 company to move forward. So, and just to like to go through the food chain there, if a project reaches the general counsel of any enterprise and the words NFT, crypto, or blockchain is in it, they're going to immediately throw up a red flag. So the way that we're
sure.
combating that is we're
Yeah,
recommending tokens that are non-transferable because non-transferable tokens aren't speculative. So they likely, I don't know, I'm not the
yeah,
SEC, this is not financial or legal advice, they're likely not going to fall into kind of a securities category. From a CFO perspective,
right.
they don't want to launch things that have a lifetime or perpetual access like most tokens do. So the way that we combat that is the time bound constraints. So how do you put a time bound constraint on a token so you can plan costs? You know that it's going to start start on day one and it's going to last for
Sure.
30 days, and that's what we're going to support. And these are the costs. This is the budget that goes into it. There's also the idea of kind of a CRO, like if you're looking to drive revenue, every creative pitch that any ad agency has ever provided to any client has a slide of these are brands you should partner with. And those partnerships typically
Hmm.
involve an event with the logos of the brands, maybe some product placement, and that's as far as they go. I mean, that's collaborative partnerships in today's environment. And the reason being, the CTOs of these companies, they, if there's any kind of commingling of customer databases and alignment there, it just doesn't happen. So blockchains reduce the tech lift of really enabling those collaborative partnerships because you just have wall-to-ware experiences that are token enabled. And the real project that I'm excited about for these brands, traditional brands that don't want to move into Web3, is the idea of on chain advertising, where as a brand, I would sponsor claims in terms of memberships or subscriptions on behalf of people. So, a case in point would be a brand would sponsor a subscription to Time Magazine, and that customer experience would
Hmm.
be, I say, yep, BMW. They will provide me access to time. There's very clear attribution to the brand that they are providing me access. And then when I go and visit time, that
Yeah,
experience could be BMW branded. because BMW is providing me access to this. So everything that I receive goes back
Sure.
to that brand. In my mind, that's a much better.
Yeah. Not only branded, but also the whole experience, the content can be based on BMW cars, BMW lifestyle, other anything else related to it.
Potentially, you kind of get into advertorial. If brands
Yeah.
can sponsor the internet, like they're sponsoring the internet today, but have clear attribution to that
Yeah.
experience for users, I think that's powerful. And
For sure.
that's a project that I'm actively working on in order to prove out that use case to see if brands can establish greater awareness and consideration and ultimately transactions as a result of that direct relationship with consumers. And then from a publisher perspective, you're actually driving subscription revenue, which is much stickier than putting display ads on your website or actually working directly with advertisers.
Yeah. That's amazing. I like the vision. And I think that that's the sort of that's sort of idea will certainly drive traffic and experience. You, you need experiences to grow traffic and interest, and ultimately, Web3 adoption is going to be it's going to be behind the scenes. Like it's not going to be the way we use it now. You and I with our custodial wallets and our MetaMask and having to know how to use Uniswap and things like that. It's really going to be these sort of behind the scene experiences where blockchain is working behind the scene, and the average user will have no idea how it works or what's going on, much like traffic on the internet. No one most users have no interest or any idea how the internet works, but we use it every day. Try going an hour on a
Yeah.
Wednesday without the internet, Patrick.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. It's how do you remove the friction? How do you
Yeah,
remove
absolutely.
crypto, NFTs, blockchains from the conversations? And it isn't about the technology. The technology
For
is
sure.
there.
For sure.
You can deploy a contract within a minute, and you can then create an experience within 3 minutes. So
Yeah.
you can do this. It's just you have to imagine what this is and then really get behind it.
Nice. Nice. How can people find you and how can people find Unlock?
Yeah, so I'm Patrick Workman on all the things, Twitter, Telegram, as well as LinkedIn. Unlock, our website is unlock-protocol.com. You can also find us on Twitter, where we're very active at Unlock Protocol. And please stop by our Discord. We have a thriving community of locksmiths that are all part of the Unlock DAO, and they're in there vibing 24/7 all around the globe. So stop by, say hi. I'll probably say hi back. And if you want to unlock a better web, we'd be really grateful.
Awesome. I appreciate that. We are Bankless Consulting. That's at Bankless Consult on Twitter and banklessconsulting.substack.com. Check us out. Subscribe to the podcast here, Spotify, uh, wherever else you get your podcasts, and on YouTube now. So check us out. Patrick Workman, thanks for joining me, and I will see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for being awesome, everyone.